Everyone, welcome to our first reading chat. I hope this chat finds everybody doing well, enjoying the course, and maybe even enjoying the change of pace, and that we are leaving math behind us and heading into reading. For some of you, that's probably a welcome change, and for others of you, you're like, oh no. So let's first discuss, and let me tell you that if you still have math questions, please feel free to email me or post anything on the discussion board so that I can answer or any of one of your classmates can chime in. I'd be more than willing to help you. Also, don't forget that any math resources that you may want, make sure you download and save to your computer or print them for future use. I continue to tell you that for the math and for the PAPA and the core, the resources are somewhat interchangeable, and for you to be able to use them is a good idea. So I highly suggest doing both. Okay, tonight what we're going to focus on is reading, and I've actually broken the reading down into two different sections. I want to let you know that for the PAPA and for the core, the reading tests, preparing for both of them are using about the same, okay? The way in which you prepare will be very similar. However, in that same breath, what I'm going to tell you is, remember how I said before that math core test was really challenging? I would say it was the hardest of the three for the core test. The PAPA reading test is what I refer to as the uphill climb. It is the one that you really have to work hard in order to get past. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that it can't be done. It absolutely can be done. I see it done on a daily basis. It's just that you have to prepare and know what you're doing. But if reading is not your strength and math is your strength, then I would head to the core test. I find that the reading core test is relatively easy, especially compared to the PAPA reading test. Okay, what we're going to talk about tonight is main idea and inferences, which I would argue with you is 80 to 90% of both exams. And then the next time we meet during our second reading chat, I'm going to go and review text organization, author's objectivity and reliability. And then I'm finally going to just glaze over just so you make sure you know the difference between fact and opinion. And for the core exam, they also feature text features in which you have to be able to read graphs and draw conclusions from graphs or visual pictures. PAPA students, there are no graphs or visual pictures on the exam. Having taken both exams, I have found that the PAPA exam has anywhere from 8 to 12 passages, 2 to 3 questions a passage, and you get a mix of longer passages, which at the most are 4 paragraphs, and then a mix of like a shorter paragraph passage. I feel that the core test has relatively short passages. Having taken those, even though the core has more questions, 56 questions, and more passages or more paragraphs to read, there's less reading on the core than there is on the PAPA. The passages are short and sweet and to the point. So that to me also gives it somewhat of an easy feel to it. For the PAPA reading exam, while the passages are longer, you also have to really watch your time. You only have 45 minutes and you are talking about a minute a question. I know myself, having taken that exam, I find that I do well with all timing and all other exams, but that PAPA reading test really causes me to focus on the clock, especially if I have to read a passage twice. Speaking of reading passages twice, I don't advise it. In other words, you shouldn't have to read it twice if you read it well the first time. Here's what a lot of people have probably told you in the past. They have said to you, read the questions first and then go look and then read the passage. I will sit here and tell you that as a reading teacher and a reading comprehension teacher for many years, that is the one strategy that I wish I could break and make sure that you never, ever, ever did again. Here's why. When you go to do this, you are reading the question and then you're going back to read the passage. When you go back to read the passage, you're looking for the answers. My friends, your answers are not in there. Over 90% of the tests, the answers are not in the passage. If you're picking an answer that's directly written from the passage, you're probably getting those questions wrong. I always tell people on both of these exams that it's not what's written in the black words, it's the white spaces in between the words. In other words, it's all about inferencing an implied main idea. If you are finding something directly in the passage, then you are missing the implied main idea and the inferences you're supposed to be making. So I never, ever, ever suggest reading the questions first. I also don't suggest reading the questions first because then you're focusing on looking for those answers rather than getting the meaning from the text. My second big point of what I would tell you to do is to jot down notes to maintain your concentration. A lot of people will tell me, they say, oh, Annie, these passages are just so boring, or I can't get into them, or they're not exciting. Well, I'm sorry, guys, that's what's on there, and you have to go in like, I am gonna love reading about history or the insides of a beetle or whatever other thing they're going to put out there for you. You have got to just have that mindset of you are going to like every passage. The other thing I'm going to tell you is you need to take notes. That way you stay concentrated. So when I'm taking the exam, I'm not talking about taking notes like textbook taking notes. I'm not saying that. I'm saying writing down 1 or 2 words or a phrase per paragraph that helps you understand and gather meaning from what you're reading. If you're doing that, that's keeping you concentrated on your reading. Too oftentimes what happens is you read the questions first, then you go and read the passage, and then you read the passage and you're like, I don't know what I'm looking for. I lost it. I can't find these answers, okay? Then your next strategy that you try is you're like, well, I'm going to read it again. Well, as you're reading it again, you totally lose concentration. You start checking the clock, you go back and forth checking answers, your mind starts to wander, and then you've really blown everything that you've done. So what I suggest to do is read the passage one time, really read it, really concentrate on it. Don't read the questions first. Put all your energy towards reading that passage that first time, and you will find much more success. Now, that being said, what the next big thing that I have got to get in your head would be to get rid of the idea that the main idea, number 1, is anywhere stated in the passage, or number 2 is the first sentence. Since you have been in 3rd, probably 2nd grade, everyone has told you that the main idea or topic of the paragraph is in that first sentence. I know they've told you that for a long time. If that's what you're using to solve the answers on the PAPA or the core exam, you will not pass. The main idea is not going to be written in the passages, and it's not the first sentence. If you find it in there, then your answer is incorrect. Let me tell you what main idea is, and get this in your head and get it practiced. Over 60 to 75% of the questions on the test are main idea. For example, what is a summary? What is the main idea? What is the author's conclusion? What would be a fact that would go with this? All of those things relate to main idea. You have to know what main idea is. Main idea is not only what the paragraph or selection is about, but also, very importantly, why it's being written. I'll say that again. It's what is it about, and why is it being written? In other words, what are you supposed to learn from this? Why is this author writing these paragraphs? Okay, are they trying to persuade you? Are they trying to entertain you? Are they trying to just give you facts? You have to pull out the meaning. For example, I always tell people to think of a Disney movie, okay? I would say to you, oh, let's pick the Disney movie of Beauty and the Beast, okay? If I said to you, what's the main idea? A lot of you would say to me, oh, there's a girl named Belle and she's really beautiful, and in exchange for her father, she decides to stay with the Beast and they fall in love. Well, what you just gave me was what the story was about, but that's not main idea. That is only one half of main idea. Main idea is what the story is about and what you're supposed to learn from it, or why is it being written. Well, the whole point of Beauty and the Beast, the whole point of learning what's going on, is to realize that love is bigger than any physical appearance that might be out there. And so you can learn to love someone based on their personality rather than physical appearance. That's what the author wants you to learn. That's the meaning behind it. That is the main idea of what you would be looking for if you read that selection. Too oftentimes you guys are looking for only what the main idea is about, and you're missing half. What is the story about? And why is the author writing it? Or I'll say it another way. What are you supposed to learn from reading this selection? So I have pulled up here tonight one of my PowerPoints that I will show you where it is a little bit later, but it's called Reading Essentials. And I love to share this with people, especially to show you this exact point. Okay, so let me share with you what's going on. Let's read this paragraph right here. One odd suggestion for curing hiccups is to cut holes in a paper bag, put the bag over your head, and breathe deeply. Another is to put a teaspoon of sugar on your tongue. By the time the sugar has disappeared, some claim, so have the hiccups. Some people feel that the right way to get rid of hiccups is to cover a glass of water with a clean handkerchief and then drink the water through a hanky. If none of these methods work, you might try yet another odd cure for the hiccups. Stand on your head, close your eyes tightly, take a deep breath, and recite, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Now, if I asked you what the main idea of this paragraph is, many of you would say to me, it's about curing hiccups. Many of you would get that wrong. It is not just about curing hiccups. That's only half of it. What else are you supposed to learn about these curing hiccups? Well, based on this paragraph, I would say the way to cure hiccups is the way that they're listed is there's many pretty abnormal and unique ways for curing hiccups. That's what we're supposed to learn. Not just the ways for curing hiccups, but that they're unique and abnormal. You have to make sure you understand what they're looking for main idea. Let's take a look at this one. Some workers skip breakfast and try to make up for it by eating a big lunch. Study shows that workers who do this lose as much efficiency as work as people who've missed a whole night's sleep. Workers who eat a high-protein breakfast and a light lunch, on the other hand, tend to be energetic and efficient throughout the day. Furthermore, a separate study proved that teens who eat breakfast do far better in school than their classmates who don't. I would start right here. A glass of milk, whole wheat bread, and cheese make a good breakfast. That's not what this is all about. Teens who want to do well in school should eat a good breakfast. Is this only about teens? Skipping lunch probably does not make one less efficient. Well, number one, this is incorrect based on what was presented in the paragraph. And number two, it's not about skipping lunch. The whole paragraph is eating a good breakfast increases one's efficiency throughout the day. Hopefully, by looking at this, you can see that main idea is not just what's listed in the paragraph, but what you're supposed to learn from reading it. Another suggestion I have for everyone is people will tell me, Annie, I just cannot get this paragraph or whatever I'm reading to make sense. Another suggestion I have for you is to literally plug your ears, put your fingers in your ear, and read the story to yourself under your breath. Now, I know they might kind of look at you strange at the testing place, but you actually have to kind of hear this, what I would say, rattle around in your head. When I tend to read something out loud to people, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. I totally understand what the main idea is. Well, if that's something you need to do, then put your fingers in your ear, read it aloud to yourself, and make it rattle around so that you can then understand what you're reading. Main idea. 60 to 75% of the questions on the exam. You've got to get this down. You've got to practice it. I'll show you where I want you to head in order to do that. The other thing I would like to tell you is all about inferences. When you're talking about inferences, my big clue is that you're only allowed to make one jump. Too oftentimes when I'm tutoring students and I say to them, tell me what you can infer from this passage, they'll say to me, well, because of this, well, then this would happen. Well, if you make what I call 2 jumps on the lily pads, then you've gone too far. When you make an inference, you have to have one fact that can directly relate and prove the inference. If you go from a fact and then stretch it a little bit farther in order to make it work, then that's not the correct inference. You can't infer that. The other thing I would tell you is always keep in the back of your head, your inference is going to have to go with your main idea. If you find an inference that doesn't relate to your main idea, then something's probably wrong. Everything in these exams are centered around your main idea. You have got to have that in your head, know what's going on, and lead with that foot. Let's take a look at some inference practice together. I'm going to, let me make this a little bigger for you. There's an old story about a certain state legislator who had spent some time at a mental institution. For years after, when debate in the legislature got heated, he would wave his release papers and declare, "I've got papers that prove I'm sane. What about the rest of you?" I'm asking you now to look at these 4 answer choices and show me which ones would be correct inferences. Number 1, the legislator was ashamed of having been in a mental institution. Well, if he was ashamed of being in a mental institution, he never would have been waving his release papers. Number 2, when he left the institution, he was considered sane. Well, yes, because he has the papers to prove it. Number 3, the legislator had been reelected despite his mental problems. He's still there, and he had probably have been reelected. That's one jump. It doesn't say he's been reelected anywhere, but he's still there. That's one jump. The legislature never should have been put in the mental institution. That doesn't go along with the main idea. It's not about whether or not he shouldn't have been in there. It's that he was in there and now he's sane. So that one's not correct. The legislator should never have been released from the mental institution. Again, incorrect, and it's not doesn't go in conjunction with the main idea. If you don't know you know that the main idea is that he was there for a while and that he still has the papers to prove it. You have to be careful when making an inference that you only go one jump ahead. Now, what I want to share with you is some of the resources that I would be practicing this week in regards to where we're going to be headed next. When we go next week, we are going to be discussing, like I said, author's objectivity and reliability, text structure, general versus specific details, and then finally we are going to get into reading texts and graphs in order to help you for the core exam. If I were looking at my website on Blackboard, I would, and what I did is clicked under reading. One of my absolute favorite sites is right here called Excellent Review. Let me open this up for you so that you can see where I'm headed. These are reading comprehension worksheets. And when you scroll down through here, you see there are grades, and I would start at grade 8 and finish all the way through grade 12. But there's even more down here. Here's grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then, my friends, there are even more. And as I scroll, you can see all of these different ones. As I scroll down through here, I highly suggest you have to be familiar with the red and the yellow. The green ones tend to be a little bit too easy. This site, again, I'll point out to you, is under the reading button called Excellent Review. It will pull you out here and you will get to this site. Recently, I have seen a lot of students have a lot of success with the PAPA and the core test, especially both with the reading. And here's how I'm getting them to pass. I tell them every day for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, they practice an hour on the site that I just showed you. An hour should give you about 2 or 3 passages. So do 2 or 3 passages, mark them off. There's many more. There's enough there to keep you going for about 6 weeks. But everyday practice will help you get past this exam. Let's face it, you haven't done a lot of reading comprehension skills since about 8th grade, because when you get to 9th grade, your English classes were pretty much focused on writing. And in college, although you're reading textbooks, you are probably focused more on what the college professors want you to focus on rather than what you think is important. So you really haven't practiced this skill in a while. So you need to go out to this site every day, 3 or 4 passages for an hour. That will get you over the hump of this exam. Some other sites and other things that I highly suggest doing. Under highly suggested reading activities, I really like these basic lessons right here. These lessons 1 to 20 will give you a good general idea of what you still need to work on, whether it be author's purpose, main idea, conclusions, inferences. By going through those lessons, it will help you. I also would suggest these reading PowerPoints. The one I was referencing tonight, if you want more practice, is right here called Reading Essentials under PowerPoints and Reading. Papa reading PowerPoints, but again, the core will also help you. Let's jump back out to this reading, to the reading button. Under the ETS specific resources, this is the reading study guide. I highly suggest any of you going this direction to take a look at it so that you know what I mean about text features when we discuss that next week. And then finally, the other thing I wanted to let you know is that I have a ton of additional resources under the what I call Papa reading section, and these are broken up by objective, which again would also be helpful with my core students. Your homework this week is to finish 2 reading tests. Now, a lot of people ask me, how many can I miss? Well, for my Papa students, I'm looking at 10 or less. 8, I'd be much more comfortable when you're taking those exams. My core students, when you go to take your exams, out of 56 points, you have to get about 75% correct at the very least. So I say don't miss more than 12 and you should be fine. 12 to 15 is probably your range, but I feel much more comfortable at 12. Again, I cannot emphasize, say, scream enough to the high hills that understanding the main idea is extremely important. If you're still struggling with that and you still don't understand what I'm talking about by main idea, please email me so that I can help you and that I can help you get over the hump, because that is what you have to understand in order to pass these exams. I wish everybody luck in preparing for this reading exam, and I will see you all here very shortly, and we will discuss the next section of reading. Take care. Have a great night. Bye-bye.